Tim Vickery joins us. Good afternoon, Tim.
Yeah, 60 next up. You ain't going to be seeing me doing none of that no more.
No samba dancing for you. Although, you're going to take us back to 1986. You say Carnival gets judged today, and there are football links, isn't there, back in the day to Carnival?
What a lot of people don't realise about the big Carnival parade is just how seriously it's taken. And it's judged down to the tiniest little bit of detail. And let me take you down, because we're going to 1986. Now, Socrates is at this point not the Greek philosopher. He's Brazil's captain, and he's just a few months away from leading them in a World Cup. And he's come back from Italy. Well, I don't think he liked any of that Italian discipline. He wasn't very happy there. So he's going to make up for all the carnivals he missed while he was away. And he gets himself on the judging panel, and bizarrely, to do the drums, because that's really technical. It's like an orchestra of, there's so many drum pieces there, and you really got to listen to the details and so on. And you're supposed to be in your cabin, paying attention to every little detail of this drum orchestra. And Socrates is saying, well, I'm not having any of that. I want to dance around. So he's dancing around as the scores go past. And then the scores come in. And he gave one of the big traditional schools, one of the big rivals of his favourite school, he gave them 9 out of 10. Now, you might think that's not a bad score, but it's the same as naught, because all of the marks, they're all between 10 and 9.6. 9.5 is an absolute 9. It's just off the scale. And the school quite rightly protested, and it had fairly solid grounds for its protest. It said, Judge Socrates, he'd had a few sherbets, and so this accusation was levelled at him, and he said, "Yeah, I had some whiskey and so on, and I was getting happy. That's the spirit of Carnival."
He used to smoke,
but it's not really supposed to be the spirit of Carnival judging, and so they tried to get the school affected. They tried to get the whole judging thing thrown out and done again, but they couldn't do it. But Socrates was never allowed back as a judge. And when he stood a few years later, he stood for president of a protest candidate as president of Brazil's FA. And his rival said, Socrates is standing and his running mate is Johnny Walker. So anyway, a life well lived, but there you go.
He was a tremendous player, though. What a wonderful player.
Languid, I think the word is.
One of my favourites.
So, we saw some top South Americans in action last night in the Champions League. We'll see some more tonight. But notable goals from Rodrigo, which I'm sure people have been talking about today in Brazil. And very lovely goal from Julian Alvarez as well in the same game.
Yes, I mean, that's where the big talent is, obviously. Although one is just coming back. It's the most expensive signing we've ever seen in Brazilian football. It's a centre forward and he only just turned 20 last week, who went off to Barcelona. And it's that problem sometimes of when they go abroad early and the club don't seem to want them. It's really strange, the way this market works. His name is Vitor Roque.
Because they're not ready, that's why, isn't it? They're just not. They might be great, but they're not ready to play regular. This is what problem Chelsea have. And I see now Andre Santos, they are going to use him next season, which is right. He's just got in the Brazilian squad, hasn't he?
Well, he's got in the pre-list of 52, which is not the same thing as the squad. A bigger example of this is Luis Guilherme. Poor Luis Guilherme at West Ham. They paid a fortune for him. He'd scored a grand total of 1 senior goal. So obviously he's still very much a work in progress. But when you spend that amount of money on him, there are all these expectations that they're going to come up and pull trees right from the start. So Vitor Roque, it was Xavi, who was his first coach at Barcelona, just didn't rate him, didn't want him. So they loaned him out to Betis, and he's done all right there. But Palmeiras are buying him, partly because of the Club World Cup, which plays massive over here. But they're buying him, and they've spent big money on him because they think they're going to get it. Firstly, they want to use the player, but secondly, they think they're going to get their money back and more. Because, as I say, he's just turned 20. So 2-3 years down the line, proves himself all over again with Palmeiras, gets in the Brazil side. He has already played for Brazil at senior level. And then they can sell him back to Europe and make a profit on it. So we shall see. But for the time being, he's the most expensive signing in Brazilian football.
You mentioned the squads, and Paul's very excited the prospect of Sergio Romero playing for Argentina, aren't you?
Yes, Cristian Romero.
Cristian Romero, sorry.
Yeah, Cristian Romero's been called into the prelim squad despite not kicking a ball for Spurs for 3 months. But I argue that he's probably got a central contract with Argentina, so we have to ask their permission whether he can play for Spurs or not. I mean, Tottenham apparently he's been added to the squad with their blessing. But as Andy said, when you've been out for 3 months, the last thing you need is, 14 hours on an aeroplane. It's not great prep, is it, Tim?
No, but it's Uruguay and then it's Brazil. And Argentina, they haven't got a lot of defenders. Lisandro Martinez is obviously out. It's still the eternal Otamendi, who, we thought was going to get pensioned off after the World Cup. And that's 2.5 years ago, and on he goes. They haven't got a lot of strength in depth in the centre-back department. So if he can walk, they'll send him out there. And if it means that he gets injured against Uruguay or Brazil, well, sorry, pals, that's Tottenham's problem. That's what they'll be saying.
Well, I mean, you could question whether he would. I mean, he's always going to go. We know that. So, big night for Marquinhos tonight. It's his 100th. It'll be his 100th Champions League start. He didn't play for very long. He went to Europe pretty young, didn't he, Tim?
Very young. And he made his career there. I mean, in Brazil, he was seen as too small for a centre-back. And, he's developed into one of the world's great centre-backs. I always think, as the great Ian Dury would have said, what a waste. He could have been a driver of an articulated lorry. Instead of which, he spends his time in a league where he doesn't have to do a great deal of defending. I wish that Marquinhos was playing his football in a league where he could actually show his ability week in, week out. And sometimes I think this does him harm when he steps into a big Champions League game, because week in, week out, he could probably take a deck chair quite a lot of the time. I just think he's sold his career a little bit short, because I really think he's one of the greats.
No,
I think he's just a magnificent. He's one of those defenders who's, some defenders are loud types. Others are quiet, discreet, almost like an old-fashioned school teacher gently correcting an errant student. And he's one of those. You can easily miss out on how good he is. And I think it's a shame he's got himself at a club where he doesn't have to do very much week in, week out.
Except when we see him in the Champions League and he steps up and you see his quality. You're right, he doesn't have to turn it on that much in the French league. But when you see him in top-level Champions League, you can see what a player he is.
Do you rate Anselmino, the Chelsea player from Boca, who's Argentinian centre-half? Is he possible for them?
I've hardly seen him because he's never fit.
Oh,
really?
That's a strange thing with this one. He spends more time out getting treatment than he does actually playing. So I'm going to have to pass judgment on that one, because it's a strange one for me. That was with his injury record. I'd be reluctant to spend money on him.
Last time I saw Boca, they had a brilliant centre-half. I said to my mate, he's brilliant in Europe. I don't know his name. It wasn't Anselmino, it was another one.
No, I think it was Valentini, the blonde fella. I don't know where he's gone.
Really, he was excellent that night. Brilliant.
Yeah,
player.
He's all right.
Really, in the Copa.
I think it's a problem position for Argentina. Hence the fact that Otamendi still gets a game, and that they'll, if Romero needs to play in a wheelchair, he'll play in a wheelchair. There's not a lot of strength in depth there.
Oh dear.
Wow, so it can be interesting, those games when they come up. Tim. Thank you. We will catch up with you next week.
Look forward to it. Cheers.
Tim Vickery there, our man on South American football. Still to come this afternoon. We're going to be joined by Julian Laurent, because we're going to bring you PSG versus Liverpool tonight. Jules is a self-confessed PSG fan, and I'm sure you're aware the whole model of the way that team was structured has changed in the last couple of years, and they are a pretty properly, with some big names. I mean, you shouldn't forget that. Ousmane Dembele cost a lot of money. Barrett Scalia did as well. Well, it's worth a lot of money. So it's, they are a star-studded side, just not, a Galactico side, but play some lovely stuff.
They're a team. That's the difference.
And you do sense tonight's going to be, for the neutral, that probably the best game of the round. It's got that feeling for it as a matchup, So it should be a cracking game. It's live on talkSPORT, all the build-up from 7. And we'll bring you another huge game, Bayern Munich, Bayer Leverkusen, over on talkSPORT 2 as well. But Julian joining us in the final half hour of the show. We were talking South American football there. Just one more gentle reminder that Sergio Aguero will be popping up as a guest with Jamie O'Hara and Jason Cundy tonight from 10 on the Sports Bar. So tune in.
Paul Hawksbee and Andy Jacobs, Monday to Friday afternoons 1 till 4 on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.